Awesome. So I get a redo. This is the COVID edition of What's Up in Global Law because I tested positive for COVID and I'm experiencing symptoms. So I've shortened and simplified the show. It does not in any way diminish the power and the importance of the topics. First, we'll be talking about Africa and what it's doing in electric vehicle and charging stations. And we'll also be talking about the emerging small to medium legal services space on the continent. And then we'll have a featured component by CEO Cheryl Pons of DaiTechnologies, a trendsetter and a leader in the electric vehicle charging space in the United States today. So please put any questions or comments that you have in the chat, and want to make sure that you are aware that our mission for doing these events is to create community. In a world where generative artificial intelligence is putting out a lot of content, some accurate, some not, we believe that one of the best complements to artificial intelligence is authentic intelligence from people that you know and trust. So sharing these community members today through the Global Chamber and allows you to have that authentic intelligence that you can use as you chart your path in absorbing and leveraging artificial intelligence and other technologies today. So we're not going to be doing legal advice, but we will be sharing insights, best practices, and experiences. Welcome any comments in the chat and look forward to an outstanding event. With that said, as is our typical run of show, we have what's the hot topic of the day. So CEO Pons, if you would, from your perspective, what do you think is the hottest topic happening in the world today?
I don't want to be controversial, but we're keeping our eye on what's happening with Iran, the US, and Israel, mainly because there is a body of water that moves all the oil from the Middle East to Europe. I forgot the name of the strait, but it's I guess it's like a river or strait. And if anything should happen to that situation, gasoline prices are going to go through the roof because it will make the cost of moving oil then becomes a lot more expensive due to the transportation requirements. Okay. So as opposed to, I gather the way, and I have not observed it, but I heard it on the news the other day. So someone like me, I'm like, that's not a great thing for global economy. But if you're in the EV business and people are looking at gasoline prices making steps of like 50 cents, $1.50 in a short span of time, they once again will be giving electric vehicle charging stations a closer look. So I'm a little biased. We don't want that to happen, but I will let you know that companies like my own, we're ready to respond to the demand if it were to make a sudden shift in the marketplace.
Well, thank you for that, Cher. And if I may take a slightly different take on that, I think it's the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, I think that's the name of it. Yes, thank you.
And the reason I'm taking a different, I guess, approach is because I'm concerned about the environment. And in a perverse way, it may be a situation that puts more pressure on the administration and policies to retain or even to actually reverse their position, invest in electric vehicles and other things that reduce carbon emissions and other global warming emissions in the world. So I definitely agree with you that wars are a concern, but to complement that, I would hope that this administration in the United States, as well as globally, continue to take actions to use cleaner technology energy to keep the climate safe, make it better.
Exactly. And also too, Americans have been saying that we need to decouple from oil as much as we can. And one of the reasons why I'm in this business is because I feel that way, that we have opportunity to just really explore in more depth and exploit what we know about renewables. And the thing is, the exploitation of renewables, by and large, is probably not going to be harmful, okay? Because it's a renewable. But as we learn to do more, as we learn to make it more efficient, right now it takes a significant amount of solar array, for example, to power an electric vehicle. What can be done so that we doesn't take as much of a footprint, so that people can have solar arrays that support EV adoption, at home, okay? Where it can not only power their home, it can power their car, and they can sell to the utility if necessary. And so the size of the solar arrays that people have on their homes now is primarily just for heating and cooling their homes. But more of us are going to have to go off grid than we had initially planned, I believe, in the coming years. And part of being off grid is also being off the oil grid also.
Well, thank you for that share. And I'll move us forward in the agenda, but in fact, may ask a potentially inflammatory question. What's the best electric vehicle in the marketplace today?
The one you love.
Oh, you're like a politician.
The one you love, the one that fits your personality. Okay, the one, for example. Yeah. So, for example, we know that Teslas have been all the rage, and I'm in this business, and it's not the car. It's not the car. It wasn't the car for me. And it wasn't because of who owns the company. It's just that the ride is not the type of ride that I'm used to and I enjoy. So what it did, it inspired me to it facilitated my desire to find a car manufactured by an auto manufacturer that just happened to be electric. So then I knew that I could find the type of automobile I wanted, pay at the price point that I desired to pay, and also it's also a promotional tool for my company, and rapid, and have enough like surface area so I can market my company as I drive. And so I did find, for me and my business right now, the Kia Niro is out there, but I consider it the Cadillac Lyric. I considered, well, Lucid was more aspirational. We looked at the Rivian, we looked at the Jeep Hybrid, we looked at a number of vehicles, and I decided that, and also the Chevy Bolt, and I decided the Kia was probably more in line for my business needs and myself at the time. So, they have one, just like when we buy cars now, and we're posting something it should be out today on our LinkedIn page. There's a host of electric vehicles that are coming out.
Okay.
And regardless of what the current administration is saying about government incentives and tax credits that will support EV adoption, the manufacturers have not taken their foot off the accelerator. They're going all the way through, mainly because the fleet industry has responded very positively to converting their fleets as where they can, where it makes sense, to electrified transportation and other alternative fuels. And the other thing that's going on is the next car people want to buy, they want to buy electric. And that's what's happening. And whether they receive a tax incentive or not, that's how people are moving forward in their choices. The consumers are really driving this industry in this business.
Well, definitely thank you for that share. And let's pivot into some top 10 discussion. Collectively, you and I, and also our audience members who want to jump in, what do you think are the top 10 developments in electric vehicles and charging stations today?
So when you say top 10 developments, what are we talking about?
It could be technology, it could be new entrants, it could be capital funding sources, kind of like all the levers that can make an industry go.
Okay, so one of the things that I'm keeping my eye on, a few things that we're keeping our eye on is a CFI grant. That is
Mhm.
a Clean Fuels infrastructure grant that was awarded under the IRA bill that passed, I believe, in 2022, 2023, under the Biden administration. Well, basically, the CFI and the NEVI grants, that's a National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure grant. They were they were the grants have been how can you put it, have been funded, okay, or the monies have been allocated by Congress. U.S. Department of Transportation have the monies in their coffers. However, this particular administration has put a pause on all of that. And so those of us who are been selected, DaiTechCorp was selected to install EV charging stations around the District of Columbia. We're just waiting. And uh, we're hoping, I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic that the grants will be released and on the streets within the next 6 months to a year. There's no harm in waiting. Okay, there's no cost in waiting. It gives us an opportunity to refine our numbers and even offer more positive outcomes for the communities that we hope to install the chargers at. So that's one of the things that's really going to help the marketplace, especially in urban settings where charging your vehicle is very difficult because you have on-street parking. Okay. Um, so we are looking at places like in um, strip malls, neighborhood strip malls, large parking facilities that serve the parking needs of very dense communities, very dense and diverse communities, as well as welcoming privately owned apartment buildings, buildings owned by small mom and pop landlords to install EV charging stations on their property. But it's gotten a little challenging because the rules have changed. So we've gone, so I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that we'll see some movement on this grant. The other thing that's interesting is that we've had contraction in the for the area of the large players. I don't, you know, my statement. I'm a tortoise swimming in an ocean of sharks. So we're a small boutique company, but there are a lot of folks, and we're bootstrapped. We've been bootstrapping for since we started our first installation in 2020. So there are a lot of companies that have been funded by, in significant ways, by venture capitalists and private equity, and they were expecting the movement from the federal government to be a whole lot quicker and more accelerated than it had been even from the beginning. Okay. But being in Washington, I use that as my strategic advantage. I know how slow the government moves when it's time to move to put money on the street and fulfill, a grant obligation. So we didn't depend on government contracting on the state or the federal level in order to move forward in our business. So we have survived a significant round of industry players that have dropped out of being in this space, and we're still here. Okay, so that's a major accomplishment. Like I said, I'm a tortoise swimming in the ocean of sharks. Um, and
Sure.
so go ahead.
I may jump in to give you a break and offer a couple of things that I think you'll agree that are top 10. If you disagree, I'm not going to count them. Uh, One of them is China. As far as
Yeah,
their EV manufacturing from a global perspective,
right,
I understand
right.
it's cost competitive,
It's
very well designed, and giving our domestic EV manufacturers some fits. Uh,
right.
and then the other one that I would propose, and you may be able to help me here. I
Hmm.
understand there's some EV charging technology that shortened the amount of time required to fully charge to
Hmm.
something like really fast, like an hour, which
Right. Right. So that is on that is we hear rumblings about that, but we still have a lot of inventory of like the traditional level one, level two, level three, level one charging stations. Right now, I don't know where they are in testing mode, but it's an innovation that's definitely welcome. Much like the battery to your cell phone. Remember, it used to take all night to charge your cell phone. Now you can charge it in, if you get the right size plug, um, right size charger, you can probably fully charge your phone for a whole day in like 30 minutes or something like that. So I would expect the battery technology to get better. The power is not going to change. We're still going to have 240 volts or 120 volts coming through our homes. It's always going to be 480 volts, in commercial settings, or up to 480 volts in commercial settings. That's not going to change. That's regulated, but the actual products that the consumers use and the end users use, I can see it getting better. One of the things I do want to tell you is very interesting. You can go on Alibaba right now and type in electric vehicle. And, I haven't tried it, but you can place an order for an electric vehicle from China. I don't know if it's street legal for the US. I don't know if the order will go through, what the shipping and the tariffs and all that. But they are selling EVs on Alibaba right now.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
and they
Uh,
Chinese made. But I'm standing 10 toes down with American vehicles. And the reason why is because we need this technology to reinvigorate our automotive industry. At one point in time, I think it was a quarter out of every dollar spent was connected to the auto industry. It is a lifeblood. It is an industrial lifeblood of our country. And I think it's really important from a manufacturing standpoint that we win in electric vehicle technologies and innovations coming out of the US. So, yeah.
well, Cheryl, I think we're up to 8.
Mhm.
And so the last two I have,
Mhm.
one of them I would suggest, one builds on what you just said. The current administration stated policy is to bring manufacturing back to the United States.
Mhm.
But their approach seems to be focused on carbon fuel-based burning vehicles than electric vehicles, which seems fundamentally unwise since I think the global market has shifted
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
EVs. So
Mhm.
should they not listen to what you're saying and focus on bringing manufacturing back for EVs? That's the way to go, that everybody wins?
Hey, I think let's be realistic. I don't see all fossil fuel powered vehicles disappearing like overnight. Okay. That's not going to happen. Just like, and I'm going to use a phone analogy, just like the corded phone that your mother had in her house. She didn't flip out into a cordless phone until many iterations and innovations after that. Okay. So I believe it's the same way with the automobile industry. We're not going to see that happening, overnight. There are a lot of things that we have to work on in this industry, and then mainly you're only going to get better, and the costs are only going to get more competitive if we have economies of scale. And the manufacturers, they are all throwing their hat in the ring. For example, Maserati will introduce for 2026, will introduce an electric SUV. Okay. All right. So Alfa Romeo will be introducing an electric SUV. There's some other manufacturers known for luxury, high-end power, cars, very fast, or roadster type vehicles. And they're now playing in the SUV in the SUV business, and they found an entry point in that particular category to penetrate that category of vehicles. They're going with the light haul vehicles. which they have not been able to gain much ground in the past. So I think, like I said, it's going to be consumer driven. The consumers, some people just don't want to drive gasoline cars anymore. They don't want to. Some people are just tired of going to the tired of going to the gasoline station. They don't want to be in line, at Costco or the BP or the Sunoco station. They want to do some things conveniently at home. And it is 2025. The automobile has been on the roads. The mass production of automobile has been on the road since I think it's 2013 with the Model T. And we're still pumping gas the same way we did over 100 years ago. That doesn't make sense. So, it's a shift in technology. Folks are looking for a vast change or shift in the way we power our cars. They're seeking it, and I think we have it with the electric vehicle.
Well, CEO Pons, thank you so much for that. Let's pivot a bit and let's talk a little bit about Africa and EVs. I understand you did some research recently, and are there anything you'd like to share with the audience about what's happening in the continent?
Well, I could break it up into two sections. One would be 2013 through 2021, which would be from when the first Tesla rolled off of the out of the factory to street ready Tesla rolled out of the factory in 2021 through 2021 at the I guess the midpoint of COVID. And then it's like post 2021, what has happened since then? So some interesting statistics. Okay. The number of registered vehicles in I guess these are the top 10 nations that had registered vehicles in Africa in 2021. And they are, I'll just go down the list: Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, Madagascar, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Mauritius, Ghana, Seychelles, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Angola. Two countries that are not on here that I thought was very curious was Morocco and Algiers. All right. Now, believe it or not, at that time, for example, Nigeria had 13 million registered vehicles, okay, in 2021. And at that time, 2% of their vehicles were electric, 2.7. Seychelles, small place, but 2.3% of their vehicles were electric. And I would gather that because it is more like a resort environment, and they're going to do what they can to keep it as clean as possible, right? So, and Kenya had less than 1% at as far as the expansion of EV technology in Kenya. And this is just to give you an idea. Now in 2024, some other folks are in the game, okay? And in the game to the extent that they are looking at incentives and tax credits and things of that nature for their citizens and residents that are buying electric vehicles in their country. So one of the things I say is, one of the things I like about Africa, love about Africa, is that there's this convergence of solar power and electrified driving that you cannot ignore, mainly because of the amount of sunlight that Africa gets in comparison to other parts of the world, right? So yes, they have to work out how to develop a solar infrastructure. Yes, they have to work out how to improve upon battery storage. But we have electric vehicles, we have electric bikes, and we have electric motorcycles, like what we call in our industry e-mobility. There are e-mobility solutions that are waiting for proliferation in Africa. Africa is just right for the whole thing, okay? And so, case in point, Rwanda is offering tax incentives that exempt electric cars and spare parts and things of that nature, so that more people will enjoy driving electric vehicles in that country. Kenya.
CEO,
Mhm.
CEO Potts, let me just drop in because I think you have some complimentary voices. We have a couple of audience members that have dropped something in the chat that I will read
Okay,
out.
okay, because I can't see the chat.
Yeah, let me get this where I can see
Okay.
it. So this is intriguing. One of our audience members, if I may, Eric, indicates he's funding EV manufacturing in Africa.
Wow.
And another, Ruby, who's a Global Chamber member, and we both have in common, we like hearing Ghana mentioned.
Mhm.
Because I understand I have some lineage ties to Ghana, and Ruby's a strong supporter of the Global Chamber there. So it appears that you have folks in the choir singing with you.
Oh, well, great. That's wonderful. Eric and I definitely have to connect. I'd love to know what part of the continent you're manufacturing. That would be interesting to learn more about, because I don't know if I don't think we talked about it too much, but my business is EV charging infrastructure. So we design EV infrastructure. That's the backbone. That's moving the electricity from the grid to the actual charging station and all the equipment in between
Where
to so that you can power an electric vehicle charging. And then we have relationships
where are
with,
you based?
I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm in the DMV. Yeah.
Oh, have we
And then
met? Are you one of Antoine's members?
I am
Greater
on
West?
this board, as a matter of fact. I'm one of his board members. Yes.
I'm
Yes.
surprised we haven't met. I'm based in DC as well.
Okay. And we also have relationships with manufacturers. Um,
I really quickly I financed and set up BYD's electric bus factory in California, and we created 940 jobs, among other
oh
things, for
wow.
what it was worth. But yeah,
BYD,
we're helping manufacturers and vehicle conversion companies in East, West, Southern Africa, Bermuda, Barbados, Prince George's County, Detroit. We should talk about it. Put
oh
if you
yeah, we
want
should
to
we should
if you want to put your number and name in the chat, feel free and I'll reach out.
okay, that sounds good. I can't see the chat from where I am though. That's the thing. I don't see it. Yeah. I'll for some reason, attorney, you're on mute.
Yeah, what I wanted to mention was that that's one of the things a specialty of the Global Chamber
Mhm.
is making connections in communities. So we'll definitely do our part to get you and Eric connected.
Okay. That sounds good. So we'll put
Um,
it on Attorney Bennett to make sure we connect.
and I think Jim and Cesar, who's the Uber connector, I think will help us on that after this show.
Okay, sounds good.
And if I may, because I want to try to keep us, even though this is the COVID edition, I want to try to keep us on schedule. A couple things. The first is want to make sure we reserve time for you to tell your origin story, CEO Bonds, and kind of like how you got to where you are and what you're doing.
Mhm.
And also want to share a little bit that in addition to EV charging
Mhm.
making its way, but both in the United States and Africa,
Mhm.
uh, you need the right level of support for folks who are doing agreements and attorneys
Mhm.
to actually support those entrepreneurs. So I want to show a graphic very quickly before we jump into your origin story, CEO Pons, and mention something that we've featured at the Global Chamber since this is what's up in global law. Last estimates we looked at said that total legal services
Mhm.
around the world was about $1 trillion. It's
Mhm.
about 1% of global GDP.
Mhm.
Africa is understood to be roughly about 50 to $60 billion. But what's happening, which is interesting, is we're getting more firms who are being launched to serve small to medium enterprises and entities. So
Mhm.
very ripe for the startup phase. And there's one that we had invited to attend today. They were not able to make it, but that's their sole purpose. So I
Mhm.
think in addition to the continent investing in EV charging and potentially being in a position to do what it's done in wireless phone service, where it leapfrogged the traditional landline approach that America took, which is very capital intensive, and instead overlaid a significant wireless component. Perhaps Africa can leapfrog what we're doing from a traditional EV charging and implement the best technologies faster. That work can be supported by the emerging sector of small to medium attorneys, like Nii Sanusi, who is a member of the Global Chamber. He's based in Nigeria, and he's working with organizations to create groups of attorneys to help the growing entrepreneur space in that sector. So we have EV charging in Africa. We have small and medium law practices to support startups in Africa. And we have the United States with its significant EV charging space. And we have you. And we're going to ask you now to share with us a bit more about how you got to where you are today.
Well, my origin story started when I was a child, preteen. My citywide science project, I represented my junior high school. My citywide science project was a building a solar thermal array that basically I proved out that you could heat up air or provide heat for your home with solar power. And I used a dry cell battery as a lamp to proxy the sun, a black trash can bag, and created, like I would say, heat transfer system. I didn't know what a heat transfer system was until I went to study the mechanical engineering, but that's what it was, you know. So that from one end to the next, we were able to raise the temperature of the air by 2 degrees. Okay, so that's what started it. And it was so exciting. I had considered a major in solar power. And by the time, because at the time, Jimmy Carter had touted, you know, that's the way he wanted the country to go as, you know, policy in the future. And that pretty much got smashed by the time the next administration had come in. So we always have this thing where we have, you know, one party is pushing alternative fuels, and then as soon as they get out of office, the next party wants to bring back, you know, big oil. But the thing is, the two can coexist. And one thing I will say is that we have to take this very seriously, because if you talk to the countries in the Middle East, they know that oil is going to run out. They're right now investing in renewables, whereas we keep, you know, going deeper and deeper into it without really embracing alternative fuels. All right. So that's my little, I'm gonna put a pin in that. So then from that point on, like I said, when I went to college, I majored in mechanical engineering and ended up in manufacturing. So that's where I get my background to bring things together. So in manufacturing, you don't always build everything from scratch. You pull components from different manufacturers so that you can, I know how to build an assembly line, okay? You pull components from different manufacturers. You have a silo, you'll have water treatment, you'll have water baths, you'll have conveyor belts, you'll have mixing machines and weighing stations and things of that nature, so that you can create, in our case, I was making ceilings, so that you can create an end product that can be, you know, sold and marketed in the marketplace. And so manufacturing taught me how to build things. Okay. I had also worked in military avionics when I was in college. And it showed me that, you know, precision and why precision is so important, and the quality of your work is has to be reliable for a long period of time, not just for, you know, the time of the warranty, if you will. It's been in a number of professions, hadn't really found my sweet spot yet. I thought I had it when I finally landed in commercial real estate. And what happened while I was working as a real estate officer for one of the municipalities here in the region, I ran into a guy. I was leaving Ben's Chili Bowl. To those of you who know who Ben's Chili Bowl is, I ran into a gentleman from Ben's Chili Bowl, and he was driving the first Tesla I'd seen on the street. And this was like 2016, 2017. And I waved him down and I leaned to his car. He probably thought I was flirting, but I'm not because I'm married. I leaned in and said, "Hey, tell me about your Tesla." I leaned in. He said, "I loved it. He just had all these praises for the automobile. You won't believe it. Everyone should have one." He was just going on and on and on. So then I asked him, I said, "Well, do you have a charger at home?" He said, "No." I said, "Does it bother you?" He said, "Absolutely not. It's worth it. I charge where I can, but I love the car." So this is 2016. I don't even think I had seen an electric vehicle charging station anywhere except in a magazine. Okay. There were none on the street in DC. There may have been some that were hidden behind paywalls and parking garages, but they were not as obvious as they are now. And so I had an aha moment because even though I had, moved on to other professions, somehow I was always a sustainability chick, in my work environment, whether it was, the lead specialist for my real estate team, whether I was the recycling chair or captain or whatever it was. I always had my finger or toe or my foot somehow in sustainability and in renewables. And I had an aha moment and I was like, it's finally happened. We can bring electric vehicles and solar power together, which had been a dream of mine since my childhood. And then I started to work on understanding the business, did some research, and had the opportunity to move on into this industry. And I started my company in 2018. And by started my company in 2018. And by 2020, we were installing our first charging station. And that's it. And then I met my attorney, Christopher Bennett, who's kept me out of a whole lot of situations. He's kept me honest, folks.
Well, CEO Pons, thank you for those kind words. And let me do this. We have such an engaged audience. I've seen chats that they love the topic of sustainability. We heard from Eric. We've heard from Ruby.
Yep.
So wanted to give the audience an opportunity to come off mute and any questions that you might have for CEO Pons in our last 6 minutes. Have at it, if that's okay with you, CEO Pons.
Oh, yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So does anyone in our audience have any questions or comments they'd like to share with Cheryl? And just as a caveat, we address each other formally, but we also address each other by first name, like Cheryl and Chris. It's just, for some reason, she started calling me Attorney Bennett all the time. And I was like, okay.
Well, you know what? It keeps what they call the honorarium, something. The titles are so important, So I always greet my customer Mrs. and Ms., even if some of them are like 20, 30 years younger than me, because it keeps the relationship at the level at what it should be. And it makes people feel good. So some people have this thing about the whole age thing, but it also, I feel also is a way of me honoring my customers. So,
well, I will second that. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a Southerner, and my mom was old school, so I do ma'am and sir, regardless of age. And for folks who might be offended by that, I say, hey, it's just what I do, so don't take it personally.
Exactly. It's not an age thing.
If I may pivot, so
no
yes, yeah, no, I'm about to share. But hey, they're jumping in. So Michael asked the question. So today in Africa, what are the African consumer trends vis-a-vis EVs?
Well, from what I've heard from my research, it's growing, and to the point, like I said, that the countries are offering incentives. For example, the Kenyan government has set a target for 5% of all vehicles sold in Kenya, new vehicles sold in Kenya will be electrically powered. The other thing, the one thing I really like about the African countries, they're not so much heavily focused on the automobiles. They're looking at transportation as a whole, how people get
Well,
around. So I can
if I could interject really quickly, Ethiopia allows no more importation of ICE internal combustion engine ICE
wow.
vehicles. They are only importing electric vehicles. So we're currently exporting electric trucks and buses and some cars, but mostly trucks and buses because commercial fleet owners are a better target than onesie twosies in terms of EVs. So we're exporting to Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, especially Ethiopia. We go through Djibouti to get to Ethiopia. Namibia, we're exporting a lot of vehicles, both from the U.S., Germany, and China. Unfortunately, a little bit of China, but we're also setting up facilities that do what we call vehicle conversions, converting diesel and gasoline vehicles to all electric. There should be an announcement, and maybe Cheryl, you and I need to talk about this, where Muriel Bowser is giving a contract for a firm in DC to convert a couple of hundred school buses from diesel and gasoline to electric. But to answer the question specifically, the consumer trends are they want electric vehicles. They would like Tesla. They would like
You going to
the
lunch?
all electric Ford F-150, but America neglects Africa, so they're getting most of their supply from China.
Of course.
Is the short answer.
Yeah. And then also, I was thinking also about the motorcycle industry, right? So a lot of small farm, but automobiles are still very expensive for most people that live in these countries. However, motorcycles and electric bicycles offer a huge opportunity. It's not only for transportation, but for commerce. Okay. And so I believe that we'll see a lot of growth, especially in the type of motorcycles that can haul a few 100 pounds of goods or produce from one town to the next, so they can be sold or whatever. So there's a transportation. One of the reasons why America is so prosperous is because of our transportation networks and all the mediums of transportation that we have available to move product, goods, and services from one side of the country to the other. So it's also a sign of growth in your respective country too.
And
I see
CEO Pons, if I may, in our last minute, we had 3 last minute questions come in,
Okay.
so I'm going to try to get them all done in
Okay.
concert. First, we have from Attorney Evans a question about Burkina Faso.
Mhm.
And is there a move to pair African Americans with African tech from what you see?
That's one of the things that I am personally researching. Yes. Now, every time I let someone know that I'm gonna say yes, every time I let someone know that I'm in the business, they express interest in DaiTechCorp. What DaiTechCorp has to do is find out where is my landing space, our soft spot, our competitive advantage in being in Africa, okay, or an African country. Our hope is to really nail down what we do here in the marketplace in the States and use that as a proxy or extrapolate our successes and what we call a success transfer over into another market. So we want to make sure we are doing very well here. We have sound fundamental processes that are replicable and that we can take anywhere in the world before we go off to another market. And I would say, I think there are other companies that are looking to do the same thing.
Well, thank you for that. And the
Opportunity. Yeah, there's always an opportunity. And the barriers to entry to doing work with African countries or African businesses, they're pretty high, mainly because there is a gap in a knowledge gap. right?
Mhm.
Don't really know how to do it. Now I have a new acquaintance named Eric. So I'm hoping that he and I will can sit down one day. We just map out how this thing is done. Okay.
Ha-
Because not
ha-
only
Happy to. I have to run. Can you share your cell phone number and I'll text you?
I can't, I don't see a
Eric,
text.
I have a pen and paper. I'm old school. I can write.
Okay. Why
yeah.
don't you connect with me on LinkedIn?
Feel free to find me. All right,
Okay.
Dan. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
What's your last name, Eric?
Uh,
What's your last name, Eric?
Mijong can give you my information.
Okay. Sounds good.
Eric,
Thank you so much.
Eric, that was a great segue. Mijong gets the last question because I think we're a couple minutes over, which is, for you, CEO Pons, how can the Global Chamber help you?
Well, right now we're doing some research on like how do you start and land a business, and there are a few countries that we're interested in, planting a flag, if you will. And everybody does business differently. Our choice around which country that we will ultimately start another division for DaiTechCorp was going to depend, of course, on the cost of entry. So, whereas folks, tell me about your country. We've heard good news from people from Zimbabwe, South Africa. This morning, I was looking at a video about Algiers, and I was like, wow, I hadn't even considered North Africa. Kenya, Ghana. So, at the end of the day, and there are some things that I believe we can do over there that we're not doing here. So DaiTechCorp may look differently in the continent than it does here in the States, but we like I said, we're developing a very strong business model so that we can grow and flourish and contribute to these other countries.
Well, thank you so much for that. This has been an exciting activity and meeting, and we achieved the Global Chamber's mission of making connections with community. CEO Pons, I would not be surprised if we don't try to convince you of why you should be a member of the Global Chamber, but I'll park that. Suffice to say that thanks for engaging, and we look forward to our next show, which will have a luxury hotel entrepreneur targeting helping people of color do luxury hotels, and we'll have a noted intellectual property attorney talking about what they do as patents. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.